Chapter 6. Examples of the Faith Cycle. As you learn the faith cycle, you will see it everywhere. You will see it in your life, and you will see it in the lives of others. You will see it all over the Scriptures. Let's consider a few examples from the Scriptures to get you started. Example 1. Jacob. An ancient priest named Jacob reported the following description, quote, "Wherefore we search the prophets, and we have many revelations and the spirit of prophecy, and having all these witnesses we obtain a hope, and our faith becometh unshaken, insomuch that we truly can command in the name of Jesus, and the very trees obey us, or the mountains, or the waves of the sea." End quote. Jacob chapter 4, verse 6. Jacob described how reading the Scriptures yielded many personal communications of information from God, and had inspired him and his people to accurately predict the future. Each time they tested a putative relationship of cause and effect listed in the Scriptures, they saw it fulfilled and gained the attendant knowledge. This cycle reached the point where they could read and believe the causes given for such great miracles as commanding trees, mountains, and the sea, to the point where their practice of such was as efficacious as it was for those they read about. Example 2. The man born blind. Jesus once met a man who had been born blind. In the presence of the man, quote, his disciples asked him, saying, "Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" End quote. John chapter 9, verse 2. Jesus said, quote, "Neither hath this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh, when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." End quote. John chapter 9, verses 3 through 5. The Lord made mud by spitting on the ground and rubbed some on the eyes of the blind man. He said, quote, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam." End quote. John chapter 9, verse 7. The man born blind was given a reason, through what Jesus said, to believe that God had a purpose in his being born blind, and a reason for him to no longer be blind. On the one hand, the man's willingness to allow a total stranger to rub spit mud in his eyes, and his willingness to make the long walk to where Jesus told him to go, demonstrated an immense open-mindedness. Spitting was considered an extremely crude act at that time, and the pool of Siloam lay far enough away that the instructed walk constituted a significant challenge for a blind man. On the other hand, perhaps he was just honest. He was blind and begging. What did he have to lose? Either way, in obeying Jesus, he was healed. When those who had known him asked him how it happened, he was honest. Quote, "He answered and said, A man that is called Jesus made clay and anointed mine eyes, and said unto me, Go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And I went and washed, and I received sight." End quote. John chapter 9, verse 11. He was not gushing with praise for Jesus. He merely said what he had reason to say. Next he was brought to the Pharisees, who he surely knew hated Jesus. In spite of this, he told them the same thing. They asked the man who he thought Jesus was, to which he replied, quote, "A prophet." End quote. John chapter 9, verse 17. The Pharisees were not happy about that, and told the man that Jesus was a sinner. He replied with the reasons he had to believe otherwise, reasons the Pharisees had not managed to displace. Quote, "He answered and said, Whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see." End quote. John chapter 9, verse 25. The Pharisees pushed him dishonestly, asking questions that feigned sincerity. The man directly and appropriately challenged them on their dishonesty. Quote, "Then said they to him again, What did he to thee? How opened he thine eyes? He answered them, I have told you already, and ye did not hear. Wherefore would ye hear it again? Will ye also be his disciples? Then they reviled him and said, Thou art his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. We know that God spake unto Moses. As for this fellow, we know not from whence he is. The man answered and said unto them, Why, herein is a marvelous thing, that ye know not from whence he is, and yet he hath opened mine eyes. Now we know that God heareth not sinners, but if any man be a worshipper of God, and doeth his will, him he heareth. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind? If this man were not of God, he could do nothing." End quote. John chapter 9, verses 26 through 33. Instead of exercising honest reason and considering the objective weight of the man's points, the Pharisees ignored everything he had said, appealed to a false understanding, and kicked him out of the synagogue. Quote, They answered and said unto him, Thou wast altogether born in sins, and dost thou teach us? And they cast him out. End quote. John chapter 9, verse 34. When Jesus heard that he had been cast out, he went to find him. Quote, Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him, he said unto him, Dost thou believe on the Son of God? He answered and said, Who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? And Jesus said unto him, Thou hast both seen him, and it is he that talketh with thee. And he said, Lord, I believe. And he worshipped him. And Jesus said, For judgment I am come into this world, that they which see not might see, and that they which see might be made blind. And some of the Pharisees which were with him heard these words, and said unto him, Are we blind also? Jesus said unto them, If ye were blind, ye should have no sin. But now ye say, We see. Therefore your sin remaineth. End quote. John chapter 9, verses 35 through 41. Jesus called attention to the fact that this man had honestly acted in accordance with the reasons he had been given to believe something other than what he previously believed. From this example, we see that belief is much more logical than most assume. Faith is not some marvelous thing. Though it leads to marvelous outcomes, it does so step by step through measured and justified reason. We are not condemned for lack of extraordinary belief, but for refusing to believe what is plainly manifest to us. Example 3. The Samaritan woman at the well. Our final example is found in the woman Jesus met at Jacob's well. Quote, There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus saith unto her, Give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away unto the city to buy meat. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. End quote. John chapter 4, verses 7 through 9. It was highly irregular for a man to ask a woman to fetch water for him, and downright scandalous for a Jewish man to ask a Samaritan woman to do so. The woman's humility was witnessed by the fact that instead of running away or even ignoring him, she answered him to ask him why he was acting so strangely. Quote, Jesus answered and said unto her, If thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, Give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. The woman saith unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, and drank thereof himself, and his children, and his cattle? End quote. John chapter 4, verses 10 through 12. Jesus responded to her reasonable consideration of what she had experienced by acting even stranger, saying that he had something called living water. Though she was confused, she did not respond by ignoring him or pretending to understand. She asked yet another 2 questions. Honest reason requires paying due diligence to evidence provided and asking as many questions as merited by what is observed. Quote, Jesus answered and said unto her, Whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. The woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. End quote. John chapter 4, verses 13 through 15. Jesus' response to the woman was to provide even more information. Though she certainly did not understand who he was yet, she responded to the evidence he had shown that he possessed something of value to her by requesting it of him. This was the exactly appropriate response for such evidence as was presented, showing her to be a reasonable person. Quote, Jesus saith unto her, Go, call thy husband, and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband. For thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband. In that saidst thou truly. The woman saith unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. End quote. John chapter 4, verses 16 through 20. Jesus provided her with greater evidence to show that the value of what he possessed was greater than she could know based on the information she already possessed. To this, she made the appropriate response, increasing her assessment of the value he possessed. Quote, Jesus saith unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh, when ye shall neither in this mountain, nor yet at Jerusalem, worship the Father. Ye worship ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. The woman saith unto him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. When he is come, he will tell us all things. Jesus saith unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. And upon this came his disciples, and marveled that he talked with the woman. Yet no man said, What seekest thou? Or why talkest thou with her? The woman then left her water pot, and went her way into the city, and saith to the men, Come, see a man which told me all things that ever I did. Is not this the Christ? Then they went out of the city, and came unto him. End quote. John chapter 4, verses 21 through 30. The woman demonstrated a sincere attempt at reconciling what she was learning from Jesus with what she knew from previous reasoning and experience. Jesus provided her with even more information, finally plainly telling her that he was the Messiah. Having made several iterations through the faith cycle during this conversation, she was now ready to hear the truth plainly, and demonstrated this by the appropriate response to such information. going and finding everyone who would listen to come hear him.